elderly Rebbitzin who lives in my neighborhood. Her name is Rebbitzin Fisher, and her husband is one of the most important rabbis in our neighborhood. And her brother-in-law also was Rabbi Diane Fisher, who was one of the greatest rabbis of the previous century. So just to give you a sense of who she is. She's an extremely lovely human being. And every year, one of the highlights of my, Erev Pesach, of the weeks leading up to Passover, is that I see that every year her granddaughters, she has hundreds of grandchildren and great-grandchildren, scattered around Israel. And so every year, a bunch of her granddaughters gather together one day to help her clean her house for Passover. And what they do is they take all of her furniture, and it's all this really old furniture, from the turn of the century, not like the year 2000. I'm talking about the previous year 1900, really old sort of furniture, sort of antique stuff. And they take it on the street and they sort of wash everything down, and her old pots and everything. She lives extremely simply, and I just feel like it's such a beautiful snapshot of religious life in Jerusalem to see Rebbitzin Fisher cleaning her home with her granddaughters. So a few years ago, I had an interesting experience. We have a family friend who is very successful in business. She is very high up in a corporation, and she was in Israel for business. So she came to visit right before Passover, and so I was going on a walk with her around my neighborhood, showing her around, and it happened to be that the day that I was showing her around was the day that Rebbitzin Fisher was cleaning her house with her granddaughters. So I said, "Oh look," I thought this is really going to touch this woman's heart. This is really going to, get to her. So I said, look at this Rebbitzin. I said, look how she lives. I point out her furniture, this old furniture. I said, she lives so simply. I said, and here, she's getting ready for Passover, and her granddaughters come from all over Israel to help her. And this family friend I was speaking with, she has very little connection with Judaism, almost none. And she makes this sort of face, and she says, don't you see that these Orthodox women, they have such a hard life. Look at them working and scrubbing here. They have such a hard life. And, it's so distressing to see, in the modern state of Israel, here, people living in a slum. What? This is public housing here? Is this a slum? People living in such poverty. So it was really jolting to see Rebbitzin Fisher, through this family friend's eyes. And it was just really, striking because, of course, I see things exactly the opposite. Here's our friend, a family friend, who lives, a very wealthy, fancy existence on the Upper East Side in Manhattan. And, but if you had to compare with Rebbitzin Fisher, who 65 years after the Holocaust has managed to bring in, hundreds of Jews into the world, who has dedicated her life, after the Jewish people and a Torah way of life, a Jewish traditional way of life, was almost annihilated, almost wiped out by the Nazis, Yimach Shemam. And Rebbitzin Fisher has dedicated her life and really very much succeeded in helping to restore Jews to the world and a Jewish way of life, on a spiritual level. How can you even compare between these two women? One is Rebbitzin Fisher's a millionaire, a billionaire, on a spiritual level. It was really striking for me. And it reminded me of a story that I heard from Rabbi Ezriel Tauber. He told a story, and he said, imagine that there's a Jew living in Auschwitz. And he's just holding on barely to life. He doesn't have any food, barely, and he's very, very sick. But it's Seder night. It's Seder night. And he says, it's Seder night, and he feels, it's Seder night, and he feels so uplifted and so overjoyed on Seder night. And even though, he doesn't have a Seder, he doesn't even have a Seder plate or matzahs or anything. He doesn't have, he doesn't have a Haggadah, he doesn't have anything. But he feels Passover in his heart. And compare that, with a person who's going to spend Passover, eating in fancy restaurants and staying in a fancy hotel and eating 10-course meals and wearing the fanciest clothing and stuff. But that person doesn't even have any idea that it's Passover. Doesn't even have any idea that it's Seder night. So Rabbi Talber asks, which Jew is really free? The one living the high life or the one living in Auschwitz? So, I want to bless all of us moms. I'm sure that all of us are working really, really hard as we're getting ready for Passover. And I just want to bless all of us that we should remember what a tremendous, tremendous privilege it is. We're surrounded by, we're in a people where thousands, maybe millions of our fellow Jews are assimilated or in the process of assimilating, and we're working hard, but God willing, on this Seder night, we will really, really be free. So I want to bless all of you with happy cleaning and with a wonderful, wonderful week.